Hello there, I hope your day was great. Today we are going to read not just Reddit stories, but scary, paranormal Reddit stories. So if it's night or you're alone or you're in dark and you have like a closet facing you, maybe don't watch this. Don't watch this. Let's start. This question was posted on the subreddit Paranormal. Tell me your most shocking paranormal story. Not usual ghost encounters or glitch in the matrix where you had lost the key and then found it in the usual place. I mean something unhinged and unbelievable. I've not really read these, so if my pronunciation is bad or I mispronounce something, which I will, I'm 100% sure, don't say anything, okay? So this is the first story. I was house sitting for some friends and they rent out part of their upstairs room for a cheap price to the local college students. I used to rent from them, and when I moved out, I moved down the street, so I was easy contact for pet care or house sitting while they were on trips. Needless to say, I knew the place well and was super comfortable taking care of it. Well, the first night I was around, I was cooking dinner and I heard something fall down the stairs to the upper bedroom. It sounded like a box full of books, like it was loud. The upper bedroom stairwell is closed off by a door, and I wasn't sure if the current attendant was around, so I knocked and asked if they were okay. I didn't get a response, so I yelled. I was coming up to check on them. I opened the door and the stairwell was empty. No box, no nothing. Went upstairs and there was no tenant, and there wasn't anything I could see that was out of place. I was confused but summed it up as just something my mind made up. A couple nights later, I was getting ready for bed. I was staying in the downstairs guest room, and there's a light that's on a slider that will dim when someone adjusts it. There was also a sliding door I had closer to the bedroom. All this will come into play in a second. Well, I was in bed and had the light all the way on when I heard footsteps upstairs. It was a heel-to-toe kind of sound, and it was making a gesture 8 in the bedroom stairs. It was still decently early, maybe around 8 or so, and I texted the tenant to let her know I was downstairs, to let me know if I'm making too much noise, to just shoot me a text. It was maybe an hour later and I heard the footsteps again before receiving a reply from her. She said she was in the process of moving out and was actually out of town for 2 years, so not currently home. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and after a few beats, the sliding light in the bedroom slowly dimmed off. I had about a second or two of silence before the sliding door to the bedroom rang out with a hug bang and started swaying on the slide pole it was on. It looked like a person had punched it from the other side. Of course, when I opened it, there was no one around. I gathered my things and left the house. Still did all the chores throughout the week and took care of things around the home, but did not stay in that house after that. I didn't have anything spooky like that happen to me while I was renting the upstairs, but notably there was an attic door that liked to open up in the middle of the night. I always thought that it was just an old house, so stuff like that happens, but after this experience, I'm not so sure. LOL. There's a reply to this. Reminds me of the time when I lived in my college hostel, and every night, the room just above mine would make noise like someone was shifting furniture. After completing my degree, I went to another university for higher education. This university was in my hometown, so I used to rarely stay in the hostel. One night I was staying in my hostel room and heard again the same furniture shifting noise from the floor above. I was too sleepy, so didn't think much about it. In the morning when I woke up, I had this sudden realization that my room was at the top floor. There is again a reply to the above reply. That happened to a friend of mine who was a nurse in nursing home. He would walk the halls late at night and hear footsteps from the floor above him on many occasions, until he realized the floor above him was the roof and the door to that location was locked unless someone was doing maintenance, and nobody was doing maintenance at 2 a.m. Other nurses from other shifts said that they thought the place was haunted, Another interesting thing that happened was they had walkie-talkies that received pages from specific rooms from patients who needed help. They received repeated pages from a room where the patient had died the week before and the room was empty. My friend said something sarcastic like, "Okay, George, we know you have passed on, you can go now," or something like that, and the pages stopped. I could never do night shift, no matter the pay. I mean, maybe like $1 million per minute. I could. Okay, this is technically the second story. It's under the same post, but we'll see. This is pretty long. Let's just get into it. I was in my gothic phase, still am, and my papito, I think, and I were not on good terms. He was hosting a family reunion auction, and so he went to New York to acquire some goods to sell. When he returned, he had a couple of big boxes full of jewelry. He tried to sweeten me up by telling me I could have first pick. I went down and had a look. This was in 2010 or so. There was a lot of gaudy stuff, but I did find a few things I liked. Okay. There was a Surf's Up bracelet, a 2-pack chain to give to a crush, and a gaudy necklace that had a big leopard print base and then big gems on top. I came back upstairs and showed my dad my loot, and he was like, "That's all? Go down there and pick out some more before all the good stuff gets sold." I dug through each box carefully, but there were mostly just duplicates of the same jewelry and a few others that were too corny for me. Then I took a final look in the box and found a necklace that didn't fit it. It had a wooden carved skull as the amulet, and the necklace was made up of miniature white skull beads. I smelled it, and it had a distinct smoky and sweet aroma. I was excited because it was goth looking. I showed it to my dad, and he said that he didn't remember getting that necklace but shrugged it off. It was too small for my head, so I cut the strings and extended it with some hemp I had. From that point, I never took it off. Now, at the time, I had already had a lot of magical experiences and felt like a bit of an outcast. My lunch number was 10666 for crying out loud. My friends were fascinated by the necklace. One of them touched it and said he felt like it didn't want to go to him. Later that morning at school, I made a joke about the same friend getting sick from the school's chocolate milk, only for seconds later him to start puking after drinking a carton. Next were people claiming they were getting weird texts from nowhere that said "Hex" when seated next to me. I was at my lunch table, and one of the girls who sat there was genuinely terrified of me for some reason. I was getting tired of all the witch jokes and teased the whole table that I hoped they all didn't get food poisoning. The next day at lunch, only 2 out of the 8 people were there. I asked where the others were and was told they called out sick. Then I was in Spanish class and the witch jokes continued. A kid wanted to skip class and told me to give him a headache so he could leave. Now this kid, to be fair, believed magic was nonsense and that I was attention seeking. He also wanted to embarrass me. I told him, "Tara, you have a headache." Nothing seemed to happen, but then 30 minutes later he started grabbing his head and asking me what I did. I was like, "Come on, man." He said, "No, I'm serious." He then got permission to leave class to go to the nurse's office. Again, I felt like the witch jokes were getting stale. So then I'm on the school bus, and one of the girls I considered a friend was making fun of another girl who had a cold sore, saying she had herpes. I stood up and told her to stop bullying the girl or it would happen to her next. 2 days later, she got on the bus covering her mouth saying, "This is your fault." I was like, "What?" She moved her hands away and she had a huge cold sore on her lip. This is where things took a turn. My sister and I got into an argument and I told her I hoped she wrecked her car. One day when I got home from school, my dad sat me down and showed me a photo of my sister's total car. My nephew had been in the car as well. They were all okay, but this terrified me. I was scared to make jokes or say anything I would regret. Word had spread at my school and on my school bus that I was a witch. Another atheist friend of mine was defending me on the bus ride home one day. He was saying witches weren't real and that he would prove it for once and for all. He asked me to tell him something that would happen and to be specific. I told him that as he got off the bus, he would trip over his shoelace, fall down the bus stairs, and bruise his knee on the asphalt. As the ride continued, we were joking and chatting and laughing, and I honestly forgot about what I said. We all did. As Daniel got off the bus, he turned and waved goodbye to me. As he stepped off the steps, he tripped over his shoelaces and fell on his knees on the asphalt. He stood up and pointed at me and said, "You're really a witch." I cannot describe how that moment felt for me. Like time was slowly moving, like reality was bending. It was so bizarre. My friend looked fearful and confused. The bus was silent. I got off my stop feeling ashamed. Well, it gets stranger. During summer vacation, a few relatives wanted to travel to Gatlinburg, TN, and see the Ripley's Believe It or Not museum and the aquarium too. I had a young cousin who went as well. He was about 8 at the time. I was having a blast at the museum. We were looking at display of the tallest man who ever lived, and we went through a few display cases that had Native American artifacts, which I relate to as an indigenous Brazilian. Finally, my papito said it was time to head back, and we were passing by another case of African artifacts. My cousin started screaming at me, "Look, look!" I was like, "What?" He said, "It's the same as yours." As I turned and looked into an African artifact case, the exact necklace I was wearing was on display. 2 of them, in fact, showing the front and back of the model. They were identical. Yet again, the world was spinning, and I was so confused. The case said that the necklace was theorized to be a healing necklace, but it wasn't for me. It was like a tool to amplify words. It was shocking. I actually submitted my story to a Glitch in the Matrix YouTube channel, and I figured I would share it here as well. I always believed in magic and felt lucky that I got to experience it. But to be honest, I believed this was all one big prank pulled on me by my peers until I saw my sister's car wrapped around a light post. And when my friend fell, it made it more real. When I saw the same necklace at the museum, I didn't know what to think. How did I get it? How did Papito go to New York to buy cheap jewelry for an auction and end up with this artifact? And why did we randomly travel so far to Gatlinburg and happen to see its sisters in a display case at a museum? What was it trying to show me? I think now how hilarious it would have been to have taken a photo next to the display wearing my necklace with the ones in the case beside me and submitting that to Ripley's Believe It or Not. But at that time, I hid my necklace worrying they would think I stole one of the displays. Anywho, this is one of many supernatural stories I've experienced. Thanks for reading. Goosebumps. I had literal goosebumps. Oh my god. Okay, there's a reply from the OP. Wow, do you still have the necklace? Do you wear it? Did you try to research more info about it? Maybe there is even more deep lore to it. There is a reply from the writer. My parents had the necklace last. I moved out on bad terms with them my senior year, and I recall it had been a bit worn out by the time I left. The smell was gone, the gloss of the wood had faded, and the string had broken, so I kept it in my bathroom drawer, hoping to repair it at some point. I wore that thing out, and it still kept its power, but it made me more careful with words overall. When I was kicked out, my parents gave me 30 minutes to gather all my things and leave, and I didn't have the time to grab it. I asked them years later about it, and they said they hadn't seen it. Since then, I have found similar ones online, but they aren't exactly the same, and none of them have had the same energy. None amplified my words or seemed to do much of anything. I'm still hoping they have the necklace and packed it up somewhere and just forgot about it. I still look for it online and even tried to see if Replace had an article about it. I know roughly the timeline but have no idea who to contact about it. But I will say that not being able to find an exact copy in a way only confirms the strangeness of it all. There truly was no other copy to purchase that wasn't some ancient relic in a museum case. I spoke to Warden Priestess, and she told me that it only amplified what was there. So even without the necklace, I should be cautious of my words and thoughts as they have a lot of power. What I wondered is why it always seemed to be when I made negative jokes or comments that it would happen. Maybe I just didn't notice the good stuff as it wasn't as dramatic, or maybe I was just an angsty teen. Here's the next story. I am a medium and I speak with spirits, but once I went into a trance for a whole week where I didn't know what was happening to me. Since that whole week I was acting automatically. I was in that trance because a spirit took me to other astral planes to show me things that I didn't know existed. It told me about the energies of the body and how they interacted with the earth. It showed me facts, events, lives, etc. When I returned a week after that ordeal, I searched the internet and everything turned out to be true. Here's another one. So I was standing in the kitchen of the house I grew up in. There were multiple stories about a man that would stand at the back door and just stare at you. At the time I had never seen him, but that day as I was making coffee, I saw this figure/shadow in the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was my brother trying to scare me, but the moment I turned around, I saw him standing there looking at me with black eyes. He was this old man with black hair and he was dressed in night clothes/pajamas. He seemed to be sad and depressed with his facial expressions. I just stopped and freezed as he walked toward me, and he circled me twice and touched my shoulder and just walked back to the door, and I never saw him again. Oh my god. I would shit myself. I would actually, start shaking, visibly shaking. Okay, here's a long one. Okay, I got distracted by reels, but this is the long story. This story takes place over a year span after the first story while I was 15-16, so here goes. My sisters decided to go visit my uncle while he was working on some of the farming of our new house, which was something that wasn't all that uncommon for us. We lived on the same block where our house was being built, and you could actually see it from the front yard of our current house. At this point, through the house was just the wood framing with that heavy plastic that's actually pretty hard to see through all around it. Anyways, they were talking with my uncle in the garage of the new house, which was all the way in the back of the house, when they heard my dad start yelling and screaming horrible things. They could hear him yelling about how he was going to hurt himself and put himself down permanently. Of course, they all went running in the direction where they heard him yelling to stop him, which was in the master bedroom towards the front of the house. When they got there, nobody was there. They looked everywhere and couldn't find my dad. My two sisters and my uncle later decided not to repeat that story, thinking maybe it was a flux. I never heard this story until this next story, which happened almost a whole 2 years later. At this point, we had finally moved into our new house. It was amazing, honestly. My family of 8 finally fit comfortably within a home and no longer felt crowded. We even had room for guests to come over and still not be squished together. So one night my sister decided to invite over our cousin we got along with at the time. The same night my parents decided they wanted to go coyote hunting and left me in charge of all the kids. Being the oldest, I was quite used to being left in charge of the younger kids at any time of the day or night and for long periods of time. So this wasn't new for any of us. I personally preferred nights when I was left in charge. For me, it was easier. All I had to do was make sure everyone was fed, clean, and that the younger kids were sleeping by a decent time. On this particular night, I decided to have the younger kids go to sleep early-ish so that us older kids could watch movies and snack on the things our cousin had brought over without interruption. So us older kids decided to hang out in my sister's room, which was the second closest bedroom to the garage, with my room being the closest. As we were all hanging out and laughing with each other, we heard my dad yell that they were home from the garage. We all looked at each other really confused because they hadn't left all that long ago, and it was pretty early for them to be back so soon from coyote hunting. The other kids asked if we should go greet them in the garage, but I felt a little funny about it. But of course, I wasn't going to say that. Instead, I told them to let them take their time coming in, that they probably wanted to smoke before coming in, and that they would have to walk past the room we were in to get to their room anyways, and we would say hi then. They all agreed and we went on visiting. After 15 to 20 minutes, we realized that they never came in, which was really odd. The kids asked me at this point if we should go look in the garage, but I still had that really weird feeling, so I told them no and went locked the door that went to the garage instead. I then went to look out our side window where you could see the driveway and part of where we park the cars that don't go in the garage. While looking, I see that their car doesn't appear to be here, but what's more disturbing to me is the fact that there are no fresh tire marks in the fresh snow, meaning that they were never here. At this point, I cannot really hide my panic and tell the kids to go shut and lock the younger kids' room where they were sleeping and then lock themselves into a room as well. I then decide to call my parents and explain what we heard and ask them if maybe they came back and left without saying anything. They tell me they never came back and rush home. My dad then goes a sweep around the house with his shotgun and checks the garage, but there's nothing that even suggests someone was there that night. My parents and I decide maybe we heard the TV and scared ourselves, and we all returned to our rooms to go to sleep. After that night, whatever was in our house started taking a particular interest in me for some reason. Oh my god. Almost every night I would hear things getting thrown in attic above my head while I was trying to sleep, something walking. Some nights it decided that wasn't enough, and not only would I hear someone walking in the attic, but something being dragged behind it. This was an every night occurrence, and no matter how many times I tried to tell somebody about it, nobody believed me, especially not my parents. That is until it started happening to my sisters in the next room over. They also started hearing the noises in the attic, and not too long after my mom did too. It got to a point where we all had heard it except for my dad. Once we all heard it, that's when I think it started watching me even during the day. I'd be in the kitchen alone cooking and suddenly feel like there was somebody behind me just glaring at me. I'd feel frozen and feel prickly as it would look me up and down. Like I could feel where its eyes were at almost. Then I would turn around and of course there was nobody there. All of this made everyday life inconvenient, but we would sage and put out spirit plates. Just an FYI, we are enrolled Native Americans that live on the res and hope for the best. Then one night I decided to take a shower late at night. This is something that I didn't do often at that time, as I was more of shower in the morning kind of person. However, that night I did, and I got out of the shower and went to my room to get dressed. As I was getting ready for bed, I started hearing the noise in the attic again, but in a much more fast-paced motion than I had ever heard before. Instead of walking, it was running back and forth and dragging something behind it. Then from the corner of my room, I heard what sounded like a little girl laughing. I stopped, obviously, and just stared at that corner for a long time before continuing to get ready for bed. In my culture, we had been taught the more fear you show these things, the more control it has, so I tried my hardest to not be scared and crawled into my bed to go to sleep for the night. Things were pretty stagnant after that, with nothing progressing beyond the sounds in the attic or the feeling of being watched. But then late spring hit, and without the rest of us knowing, my second two younger sisters started having dreams. Well, nightmares to be more specific, but dreams nonetheless. In her dreams, she was playing with a ball and the ball rolls towards the edge of the woods. She then would go to retrieve the ball, and a shadowy man figure wearing a tall top hat. He then tells her she needs to start a fire within the house or he would hurt the whole family. She has this dream almost every night until eventually she gets so scared she does it. Fortunately, the house and everyone inside was safe, but this finally is a straw on the camel's back. We eventually got into a contact with a family friend who gave us advice on how to get rid of whatever this thing was, and it did go away. But that thing, whatever it may be, was the scariest damn thing I have ever dealt with, and I truly hope I never have to deal with it again. I have seen things since and seen things before that, but that thing was the only one that's truly ever stuck with me and made me stop looking for scary things in the dark. Even I started hearing noises from above me. So yeah, I think I should stop. It's 2 a.m. right now. So I should probably stop. There are more stories though, so I might read them tomorrow. Not today, definitely not today. So, I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Ta ta.